what your strategies, what you would propose to tackle some of the biggest issues, and I'll name a few of them.
Okay.
But I'll look to see what you think also maybe is an unaddressed issue, especially with your experience and what you see on the inside. But let me just make sure we're okay with the audio, lighting's all okay. Okay, so let me start by, this is the easiest question. What's your first name, last name, and spell it for me?
First name is Thomas. Last name is Beal. B like boy, E-A-L.
And your title with when you're on duty, what's your title?
My title is a captain. I'm a captain with the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office.
And you've been with the Sheriff's Office for?
I've been with the agency since 1997, so just a little over 25 years.
Okay. And before that?
Before that, I was an EMT for Medicare ambulance here in Milwaukee. And I did that for about 10 years. Prior to that, I was at one point in my life, a volunteer fireman out in New Berlin. So I've done pretty much a lot in public safety.
And you went on both sides of public safety, fighting crime and fighting fires.
Correct.
And helping people that were in need. Where do you currently live? You live in?
I'm in Glendale.
Glendale, okay. Great. Well, thank you for being with us. As you look at the situation, I think one of the things that we hear from our audience is crime. The crime rates, and now of course a lot of it's the city, but we've seen those homicide numbers reaching record numbers. What are you going to do? What's one thing that you could do differently to fight the crime in Milwaukee County?
Well, a lot of people, when they hear crime, they immediately think of the city of Milwaukee. The crime issue is actually, like you said, throughout the entire county. One of my biggest issues, or one of my biggest things that I really want to do, is partner with all of the municipalities and the jurisdictions, come up with a task force to work on the stolen vehicles, to work on the reckless driving, to work on the senseless homicides. If we all can work together throughout all of our agencies, it'll help everybody involved.
So the task force would each municipality would kind of bring forward some staff to put on that task force
exactly.
to fight these particular high volume issues, like you mentioned, the reckless driving or stolen cars, I should say.
Exactly.
You're going to be overseeing a $50 million budget, 600 employees. Right now, staffing in the jail is as you know, is a big issue. How are you going to recruit new officers, new staff for the jails, new employees in the midst of this issue across the state where people are having a hard time hiring people?
Yeah, and the staffing crisis is throughout the labor industry, not just in law enforcement, not just Milwaukee County Sheriff. However, one of the things that I really want to do is work with the Milwaukee County Board to come up with incentives to actually bring people into the agency and also to retain people. So have an incentive to even just to sign up like a lot of the private organizations do, and then also have an incentive to retain people. Right now, the Milwaukee County, we're just not as competitive as other counties as far as our hiring. And so once we can be competitive, we can bring in more people and more qualified people to do these jobs.
One of the things you're going to have to battle with is the funding, because the county board sometimes can get into some fights over the budget with the county sheriff. How are you prepared to wrestle with them, to argue your needs? Because they're going to say, hey, we need to cut the budget. You're going to say, well, I might need some more funds here.
Well, and that's generally how it's always been in the past. But right now, this is a whole different time. And what we have to do is be able to convince the board, all the board members, that this is something that's a priority. This is an investment. It's not just we're spending money to pay people. This is investing in our employees and investing in our agencies. So it's going to be a fight, but it's not an impossible fight.
Some of the board members would say they want to cut that budget back. They want to invest some of your budget in community services. They say that's actually going to be the key to fighting crime and bringing down those crime numbers, is invest in other things like mental health, education, poverty reduction. They want to take some of your budget and put it into that. What would you say to those proposals?
Well, I wouldn't be just adamantly opposed to it, but the thing is, though, we need people to provide safety. Those other issues are very important issues for our community. They really are. But we still also have to maintain a sufficient amount of public safety to keep our community safe. And for lack of a better term, it costs money. So they have to be willing to spend the money.
One of the other issues that you're going to have in the issue of the budget is overtime. The overtime numbers are going up.
Yes.
How can you deal with the overtime when they say we don't want to pay for this?
Well, again, that goes again with recruitment and retention. When we can hire people to do the jobs that are actually just set forth in our budget, we will reduce our overtime. We're having our employees right now doing the job of 2 people. They're primarily working double shifts just to maintain our core functions. So once we can recruit and retain the people to actually do these jobs, we can reduce our overtime.
What one of the things that we've seen, we saw 1 suicide this year, we saw 1 last year. What can you do in the jails to protect the inmates and to make sure that there are no suicides going on in our jail?
Well,
I can re-ask that question in a second.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're fine. So I can ask you that question again. We have seen a suicide in recent weeks. It was in June, right? We have seen 1 suicide this year in the Milwaukee County Jail. We saw 1 last year.
Yes.
What can you do as sheriff to make sure that those residents are safe and to prevent suicides in the future?
Well, the daily goal of everyone that works inside the Milwaukee County Jail is to keep the inmates safe. As far as the suicide rate and everything, what we really want to do is expand our mental health facilities for our inmates, both just coming into the facility and also the ones that's been there for a while, because as you can see, their mental health can deteriorate. The most recent one, which is still under investigation, so I'm not going to go too far into, but the most recent one was someone that was even in our booking process. But the thing is, we have to, as the sheriff's office, have to expand our mental health, our psychological well-being for all of our inmates.
And what about the staffing issues? If you've got staffing challenges, we heard reports that there were limited number of staff in the jail because of the staffing crisis that's going on right now. Is that leading to maybe not being able to check in on these residents as much as needs to be happening, and maybe they're not getting as much food as needs to happen, things like that?
Well, at this point, I would have to actually just flat out say no, because the staff, they are required to conduct inspections to check on each inmate at a given amount of time per hour. And no matter how short-staffed we are and all of that, that's something that always happens. There's not a situation where the inmates are neglected because we don't have the staffing to check on them. Inmate safety is our paramount concern here inside that jail.
Last question, we started with the crime rates. I want to end with reckless driving. Sometimes you're driving down the highway and you can see people speeding in and out of traffic. Yeah. I mean, what's one thing you can do as sheriff to keep those highways that you'll be patrolling and the interstate, to keep them safe?
Well, the biggest thing is actually not just putting more deputies out there, but putting them out there in a more targeted fashion. When we see in reckless driving, we normally see them in patterns in certain parts of the freeway system. And what we really need to do is analyze these patterns to actually be able to put our deputies in the spots where they're most needed. One of the biggest things also about reckless driving, not just on the freeways, but in the city, it stems from stolen vehicles. A lot of people are not driving their own personal vehicles this recklessly. These are stolen vehicles. So one thing that I want to do is also start an educational program for the public to find ways of how to prevent themselves from being victims of crime and stolen vehicles. We'll offer the clubs for your steering wheel, different techniques on how to keep your vehicle safe.
Last question is community relations. We've seen law enforcement be criticized in the public for the last few years because of some high-profile deaths in police custody. George Floyd, for example. What could you do as sheriff to heal the breach between law enforcement and Milwaukee County?
Well, the biggest thing is transparency. And I say that when we have to be transparent with the public. If we have a situation where one of our deputies or one of our officers didn't exactly follow the law or broke the rules entirely, we have to be public with that. We have to let the community know that we are working on holding that officer accountable. One of the things about the George Floyd things, which was terrible, but the thing is, the agency took so long to even to acknowledge it publicly. We have to bring all of our stuff out to the public, because everything that we're doing, we're being videoed anyway. And it's so, why not be truthful with the public?
Thank you so much for your time. Was there anything else you wanted to share with our audience about your vision for this county?
Well, my vision for the county right now is we just need to bring more community support into law enforcement. It shouldn't be that we're going to just do all these things. We need the community's help. If we have the community's help to help enforce the laws, to help keep us safe, everybody will benefit.
Thank you so much, Mr. Beal.
Thank
Appreciate your
you.
time.